From our Maritimes News Center, this is CTV News. Here is Lataevia-Ceianna.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. A suspect in connection to an assault in City Mines now faces a charge of second-degree murder. 31-year-old Tyler Anthony McNeil of Georges River was taken into custody after Cape Breton police found a man lying on the road near the Beach Street area with serious injuries at around 3:30 yesterday morning. The man was rushed to the hospital where he later died. Police are still treating this as an isolated incident with no risk to the public. In Moncton, an 18-year-old man has been charged in connection to the death of Joden Legier. He was found suffering from gunshot wounds outside a house on Logan Lane in April. Riley Phillips was arrested last week on an unrelated matter, and through their investigation, police charged him with first-degree murder in this case. Phillips is scheduled to appear in court again on June 27th. And one man is dead after a single vehicle crash on a rural road near Chester, Nova Scotia. Lunenburg District RCMP say the crash happened around 10:30 last night on Highway 329 in East River Point. Mixed reaction from travelers at Halifax Stanfield after Ottawa suspended its COVID-19 vaccine mandates for outbound travel. Effective Monday, people traveling by plane or train within Canada are no longer required to be vaccinated, and it's the same for Canadians traveling from here to international destinations. What hasn't changed are the rules for international travelers entering the country. Vaccination is required, as well as use of the ArriveCan app. The mask mandate in airports and on airplanes remains in place. 2 years after a man disguised as a Mountie killed 22 people in Nova Scotia, grieving people are still coming forward to get help from the province's Victim Services Program. Kim Burton, a Justice Department manager, told an inquiry yesterday that in the weeks after the mass shooting, the department faced challenges getting people to participate in the program, which offers counseling and other support services. Last month, the inquiry released an interim report saying many of the individuals and families most affected by the tragedy had yet to receive the support they needed. The commission has encouraged governmental and non-governmental agencies to move quickly to provide additional mental health, trauma, and bereavement supports. And here at home, as more Ukrainians seek shelter in Canada, some are finding themselves scrambling for accommodations. The federal government puts people up for 2 weeks, but then it's up to them to find permanent housing. 300 Ukrainians arrived in Halifax on June 2nd, and the federal government has been providing accommodations since then, but that ends tomorrow. We've seen Ukrainian fundraisers, big and small, over the last few months. This is a small one from a girl with a big heart.
I love to crochet. I heard about the war in Ukraine and I really wanted to do something for them.
12-year-old Gemma Jupp only learned how to crochet in January and quickly mastered her new skill. She made 30 blue and yellow whales representing the Ukrainian flag and sold them at a Lower Sackville salon for $5 apiece. Gemma ended up raising about $200 for the Canadian Red Cross Ukrainian Humanitarian Crisis Appeal Fund. Gemma's family says they are very proud of her, as are we. So the Stanley Cup final gets underway tonight in Denver, where the Colorado Avalanche face the defending champion Tampa Bay Lightning. The Avalanche are slightly favored to win the title, but they face a daunting task. The Lightning have won 11 consecutive playoff series and 2 straight Stanley Cups. Tampa is hoping to win a rare three-peat. No team has won 3 consecutive Stanley Cups since the New York Islanders in the 1980s. Still ahead on the news at noon, the mall worker who was serenading shoppers. But up next, an allergy season that's nothing to sneeze at. How climate change is worsening and extending allergy season. That's next in our Health File. There are overcrowding concerns at the Maritimes Children's Hospital. The IWK Center recently notified the public about long waits and overflow of patients. On a normal day, the emergency department sees between 80 to 100 patients, but lately the average has been 140, with 178 on Monday alone. According to officials, COVID is having a significant impact on the surge of patients, as is the lifting of health measures like masking in public.
It protected us from COVID. It also protected us from many other illnesses.
In the short term, the emergency department has added more physician hours to help improve patient flow. A new snapshot is revealing fresh vulnerabilities in Canada's housing market. As interest rates go up, prices are coming down, and so are sales. Here's CTV's Vanessa Lee on why the new numbers doesn't necessarily signal it's a buyer's market. Over to Ukraine, where 2 American fighters are missing, reportedly captured. Their families are asking for help as U.S. President Joe Biden pledges another $1 billion in military aid. ABC's James Longman has the latest. Kodiak RCMP have started doing daily sweeps or walkthroughs at 3 Moncton K-8 schools to make sure they are safe.
I think that it's good for them to kind of get familiar with the whole concept, and I think that it's also really important for the school staff not to have to do this on their own.
The principals of Bessborough, Hillcrest, and Edith Cavell have talked publicly in the past about finding used needles on school property. Kodiak RCMP say they were asked to do the patrols both due to needles and because some people were sleeping on school property overnight. The patrols started on June 2nd, and police say so far they haven't encountered any issues. The sweeps will continue until June 24th. And dangerous flooding is a concern for parts of the country with the city of Kelowna, and it is now under a local state of emergency. More than 65 millimeters of rain have fallen there, and officials are warning the water levels have not yet peaked. Calgary also remains under a state of local emergency with a storm caused power outages and downed trees. And the man who shot and injured former U.S. President Ronald Reagan in an assassination attempt over 40 years ago was freed from court oversight yesterday. In 1982, John Hinckley Jr. was found not guilty by reason of insanity, but spent years in a psychiatric hospital. A judge found the 67-year-old no longer requires supervision from mental health professionals and is showing no signs of violent behavior. A New Brunswick designer just hit a career milestone but is looking to move her fashion forward. Shiva Lindsay is based in Grand Bay, Westfield. She recently returned from Toronto, where she presented her new collection, Lost in a Daydream, on the finale night of Fashion Art Toronto. She says it's the biggest show she's ever done and something she's been working towards for the past 6 years she's been in business. Still ahead, Kaylin returns with your long-range forecast, but up next, one Cape Breton home swarming with bees.
I think he said he left with 25,000.
A homeowner's backyard discovery. We have the buzzing details coming up. Now, this supermoon is looking like a Greek goddess. Check out this stunning full moon rising. The strawberry full moon is casting its light on the marble columns of the Temple of Poseidon, just on the coast south of Athens. This temple, built in the 5th century BC, is a popular spot to watch moon risings for obvious reasons. And coming up tonight on CTV News at 5.
Hi there. So tonight on CTV News at 5, we take some time for sage advice. Learn how to grow your own seasonings this season with tips and tricks from the Garden Guide. It's Homegrown Herbs tonight at 5 on CTV.
Thanks, Maria. That's our show for today. If you missed any of our stories or you'd like to keep up with breaking news throughout the day, you can visit our website at ctvnewsatlantic.ca. It is your home for news. I'm Lataevia-Ceianna, filling in for Amanda Debison. And from everyone here at CTV, thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you back here tomorrow. The tourism industry in Cape Breton is getting a big boost. The federal government is spending more than $2.2 million to help the island's tourism sector rebound from the pandemic. The money will help fund what's being called a World Tourism Institute at Cape Breton University. As restrictions ease, though, there's another concern for the industry: gas prices. Too often in hockey, concussions on the ice keep players on the sidelines with potentially serious concussions. Now, some Canadian researchers have a new tool they hope will pave the way to a safer game for everyone. As CTV's Michelle Brunaro reports, there's a lot they can learn from a mouthguard. A 57-year-old man has died following an ATV crash in Cape Breton.
Cape Breton Regional Police were called to a wooded area near Aspen Grove in Howie Center yesterday afternoon after an ATV flipped into some water. A 57-year-old man was pronounced dead at the scene. Police say 2 other men were uninjured and taken for medical assessment because of their exposure to the cold water. Police say the name of the deceased is not being released pending notification of the family. The investigation is ongoing. A fisherman who fell overboard while being transferred from a life raft has been pulled from the water and taken to hospital. The research and rescue operation was launched off the coast of Canso. Crews were dispatched to look for a man after he fell out of a life raft while transferring from the fishing vessel Mucktown Girl. Following mechanical issues Saturday night, crew members say the vessel started taking on water, forcing them to abandon ship. 4 other crew members were safely transferred from the vessel prior to the mishap. At least 1 person is dead and 12 wounded after a residential building was struck by Russian forces today in Kyiv. Ukraine State Emergency Service says 9 people were treated on the scene while 3 others were taken to hospital. Rescue crews are still combing through the building looking for victims. Russian troops have yet to enter Kyiv but began stepping up their attacks on the capital over the weekend. A rally and peaceful march was organized by a group of Ukrainian Canadians in downtown Halifax on Sunday. Their aim was simple: to urge NATO to give Ukraine more support by protecting the skies above the country and implementing what they say is a crucial no-fly zone. Well, we just lost an hour of sleep, and if the beginning of daylight savings time made you more tired, you're not the only one. So this time change actually inspired National Napping Day, which is today, and it happens annually the day after the clocks move ahead. The late William Anthony, a psychologist and Boston University professor, came up with National Napping Day in 1999. Their intent was to overcome prejudice against napping and to raise awareness about the health benefits of catching up on quality sleep. Still ahead, Kaylin returns with your long-range forecast. But up next, so much for retiring. Tom Brady already announced his retirement at the end of January, but it turns out he just missed football too much. We'll have that story when we come back. We turn now to Tom Brady, coming out of his 2-month retirement to return and play his 23rd season in the NFL. But is anyone surprised? ABC's Will Gans has more. Meanwhile, the UN Security Council will hold an emergency meeting on Ukraine today as crisis talks appear to be gaining some momentum. A deal could see Ukraine agree to neutral military status. In exchange, Kyiv wants a ceasefire and the withdrawal of Russian troops. Ukraine's president has conceded his country will likely never join NATO, a key Russian demand pre-invasion. Today's meeting was called ahead of a vote on a Russian humanitarian resolution and comes as attacks on civilian targets continue. And for the first time in 2 years, people lined up before dawn to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. Here's a look at the festivities at the Old Triangle Pub in Halifax this morning. Looks like they're having a great time. Okay, well, it's time now for a preview of the maritime weather forecast. And for that, we turn to meteorologist Kaylin Mitchell in the CTV Weather Center. The debate over whether to make daylight time permanent has been reignited after the U.S. Senate approved a bill Tuesday, which would put an end to the biannual change. It's a move New Brunswick's premier is interested in. And there's a call for the return of masks in schools. A group of pediatricians warns students and some staff in New Brunswick should go back to wearing the face coverings as the number of COVID cases in the province grows. CTV's Laura Brown reports. And students in the Halifax area were left waiting yesterday after a last-minute message was sent saying buses were being kept off the roads because of the weather. At 5:52, the Halifax Regional Center for Education sent out a tweet saying schools are open and buses are running. Then, nearly 2 hours later, HRCE tweeted again that their transportation providers decided to keep their buses off the roads because of the weather. HRCE made the decision to keep schools open because the forecast called for less than 5 centimeters of snow by 4 p.m. and temperatures above freezing throughout the school day. And a surge in prices has made fuel a hot commodity for thieves lately. Police in Cape Breton have responded to a number of furnace oil thefts in the last 6 weeks. Cape Breton Regional Police say they were called to 2 residences, a fire department, and a church after it was discovered oil had been stolen from outside tanks. A police spokesperson says this is not normally a common complaint officers respond to, but say they've received 4 calls last month compared to none at this time last year. Good afternoon. One day after his address to the House of Commons, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky addressed U.S. Congress this morning in the hope of securing more Western support for his country's resistance to Russia's invasion. While Kyiv and other key cities face intense bombardment, both sides signaled optimism about peace talks. NBC's Bree Jackson has the latest. The New Brunswick government announced today it has donated $100,000 to the National Bank of Ukraine. Premier Blaine Higgs says the money will go to help with humanitarian aid. There are about 3,500 New Brunswick residents of Ukrainian descent living in the province, and the premier said he couldn't imagine how difficult it would be for them to watch what is happening. New Brunswick will host the Canada Summer Games in 2029. New Brunswick Tourism Minister Tammy Scott Wallace says the location for the Games will be chosen by 2025. The 1985 Summer Games were in St. John, while the 2003 Winter Games were held in Bathurst and Campbellton. The 2029 Games are expected to attract more than 4,000 athletes from across the country. Maritime skies are about to get busier as major airlines prepare to relaunch routes grounded by the pandemic. A number of new routes are also being introduced. This spring, WestJet will have direct flights to London, Glasgow, Dublin, and Paris from Halifax. Air Canada has London and Vancouver on its radar. Regional connections are also on the way back, with flights from Sydney to Halifax, Toronto, and Montreal among them. Still ahead on the news at noon, saving snowy owls here in the Maritimes. But up next, the connection between sleep and the risk for dementia.
It's a clear risk factor on par with other known risk factors.
A Toronto hospital is doing groundbreaking research on how the brain functions. That's next in our Health File. Meanwhile, as the fighting continues to intensify, Russian troops closing in on several key cities, including the capital, Kyiv. The violence is forcing hundreds of thousands from their homes. NBC's Jay Gray is at the border between Ukraine and Poland with the latest on the war and growing refugee crisis there. A suspect in a Montreal homicide has been arrested in Nova Scotia. The deadly stabbing happened last October. Terrell Jacobs has been wanted on a Canada-wide warrant and was arrested in Halifax Friday evening. Local police also helped in a search of the suspect's house. Jacobs, who's still in Halifax, appeared in court Monday by video conference. Nova Scotia RCMP are continuing to investigate what they are calling a suspicious death after a violent home invasion last month. The man's family is calling for justice. And yesterday was a milestone day in the pandemic. After 2 years, the masks are off and most restrictions gone in New Brunswick. Not everyone is ready to make the switch, though. In downtown Fredericton yesterday, about half were still wearing masks. And those we asked had said they respect personal choice. Well, that's our show for today. If you missed any of our stories or you'd like to keep up to date with breaking news throughout the day, you can visit our website at ctvnewsatlantic.ca. It is your home for news. I'm Lataevia-Ceianna from everyone here at CTV. Thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.